So one thing I love about Thanksgiving, and I know this would be pre-pandemic Thanksgiving, is being in and around the kitchen while the meal is prepared. I love creating something to share with the family, or just helping food prep, or if there's any need for anybody else to do anything, just being handy and being present, or in some cases, just doing the all-important commentary on what's happening in the kitchen. I know that's always appreciated. It wasn't always that way though. I grew up with more traditional gender roles around meal prep, so that it was not uncommon, even well into adulthood, to find myself in a group of men watching football while women were working in the kitchen. But over the years, I've learned that all the fun is in the kitchen. This has been especially true for my family in recent years. Often every member of my family these days wants to make something to contribute to the meal. So I'm always working on my vegan contributions, and Sasha's usually in charge of the turkey and the stuffing. Our kids are old enough now that sometimes they want to contribute something. My brother usually manages the bar and makes some yummy cocktail for everybody, and maybe makes a good cranberry sauce. My sister-in-law makes lumpia and other dishes from her childhood in the Philippines. The conversation is good. We're sharing stories and memories and laughter. So as I read the story of Martha and Mary, I wonder if there was a much better way forward in this situation. If there could have been a time for everyone to sit around and listen to Jesus, and then for everyone, including Jesus, to work together on the meal or whatever chores needed to be done around the house. And you know, I bet doing chores with Jesus is a lot of fun. I've heard he's great with bread, fish, and wine. But instead we get this sad story about poor old Martha feeling put upon and neglected. And then when she cries out for help, she's totally denied. Jesus doesn't just not take sides, but he takes her sister's side hard. He says, Martha, you're just so wrong. It's embarrassing how wrong you are, Martha. Why can't you be more like your awesome sister? Now, to be fair, Martha brought this on herself by the way she tried to triangulate Jesus into her conflict with her sister. And that's what I want to talk about today. Billy offered a great introduction on triangulation with Paw Patrol and Taylor Swift and Garfield. And that's exactly what it is. Triangulation is when you have a problem with one person, but instead of going directly to that person and working out the problem, you go to a third person and you try to enlist them in helping you solve the problem. And so you make a triangle instead of a line. So another example would be if my neighbor is always playing loud music late at night and keeping me awake. And this is purely hypothetical. I have great neighbors. This is just an example. Hypothetically, the best way to handle that would be for me to go directly to my neighbor and talk to them about it. But I don't like conflict, and I want everybody to like me. And if I have this conversation with my neighbor, they might not like me anymore, and I might be uncomfortable. So instead, I go talk to another neighbor, and I say, isn't it terrible that this neighbor plays music so loud late at night? Someone should really do something about that. And by choosing that approach, I've done several things at the same time. First, I've attempted to form an alliance against loud music neighbor. So now I'm not alone. Now someone agrees with me and how inconsiderate loud music neighbor really is, and I like to be liked, and so that alliance feels good. Second, I've disparaged loud music neighbor and harmed them in the eyes of my alliance partner, who maybe had absolutely no problem with this person before I brought it up. Third, I may be attempting to get alliance partner to talk to loud music neighbor for me, to do my dirty work. Wouldn't that be nice? If that were to happen, if they had talked to loud music neighbor for me, well, maybe my goal of softer music at night would have been achieved. But now I have damaged the potential relationship between me and loud music neighbor. And for all I know, my alliance partner has now triangulated against me with loud music neighbor, because apparently that's how we do things in our neighborhood. So triangulation is damaging to relationships and communities, and yet it happens all the time in families, in workplaces, and I know you're going to be shocked, in churches. Now, there are two people who can always stop a triangulation: the person who has a problem and the alliance partner. Both those people have to agree for the triangulation to exist. So if we have a problem with someone, we can stop the triangulation by simply going to the person we have a problem with, which can be scary, it can make us vulnerable, but it's the healthiest way to deal with the conflict. Now, that means the triangulation never happens. Maybe our relationship with that person could be strained by this little conflict, this little disagreement, but it's also possible that a relationship could be improved because we now have greater understanding of one another. We've become closer. The other place triangulation can be stopped is by refusing to get involved when someone tries to triangulate us into their problems. When someone approaches us to enlist us in their conflict, we can simply refuse. As soon as we realize what's happening, we say, it sounds like you need to talk to that person about that instead of talking to me. Now, there are some gray areas with triangulation. There are times when we could talk to a trusted third party, maybe ideally someone who doesn't know the person at all, about this issue that we're having with someone. And maybe we need that to help us think about the part that we may be playing in the conflict or whether we're making too big a deal about something. So checking in with a trusted friend can happen all the time too. And for the most part, if the confidant is trustworthy, it can be helpful. But even then, we might ask ourselves, do I really need to involve this third person? Why can't I just be a grown-up and speak directly to the person I'm having the issue with? Or we may be in a situation where our efforts to resolve the problem directly have already failed multiple times. So we tried and we were shut down, and now we want to bring a third party in to help us resolve it. Sometimes conflict within the workplace with coworkers requires us to go to a higher person in the organization because our efforts to solve the problem one-on-one have failed. I think that's what's happening in our story this morning. Martha is definitely trying to triangulate Jesus into her conflict with her sister. It's textbook triangulation. Jesus, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? She's not talking directly to Mary about her problem. She's bringing in a third person whom she hopes will solve the problem for her. But in Martha's defense, I suspect this was not the first time this conflict had come up between she and her sister. I mean, they were sisters. Surely this is not the first time they've argued about who was going to do the chores. Maybe this is an ongoing problem between Mary and Martha. And Martha knows what Mary will say when she brings it up because it's happened so many times. She's just not going to go there again. So when Jesus comes in the house, Martha is trying to appeal to a higher authority to solve this ongoing sisterly conflict. She knows she will not get anywhere with Mary, so let's see if the Son of God can help. Well, we know it ends in a pretty devastating rebuke of poor Martha. She kind of gambled and lost. She said, Jesus, don't you care? And Jesus said, not really. He said, Martha, maybe you could just chill out a little bit. Maybe you can be more like your sister. Now, think about something here. It should be noted that Jesus may also be triangulating at this point because Jesus has a problem with Martha and what she has chosen to do while he is in her home. But instead of making a straight line and working things out between himself and Martha, he forms a triangle by bringing Mary into the situation. He never consulted Mary about this, and maybe Mary is feeling like, hey, leave me out of it. I'm just trying to sit at your feet. Please don't bring me into any beef you have with my sister. And it's also possible she's standing sort of behind Jesus, looking at Martha going, Either way, Jesus is risking damage to his relationship with Martha by teaming up against her in this way. So all in all, triangulation is not usually the best way to handle an interpersonal conflict. However, there is a shape that's different from a line or a triangle. And that may be what Jesus is trying to create here. That shape is a circle. So his confrontation with Martha may be more like an intervention. Like everyone has been experiencing Martha's type A tyranny for years, and Jesus is now standing with the whole group, inviting Martha to change her ways, confronting her with the damage that she's been causing. And so instead of just working it out between himself and her, or trying to ease his discomfort by getting Mary on his side, what he's doing is inviting Martha back into the circle, back into the community, which seems a lot more like Jesus' MO. He was all about creating community. He was all about welcoming people into the church who had been cast out, including and especially those who had been excluded, or maybe who had excluded themselves. I'd like to think that's what's happening here. Martha has kept herself out of the group and acted like everything depends on her, and nursed resentments that no one does what she thinks they should do, and been martyred with this sort of passive-aggressive drag upon the community. And now Jesus is saying, hey, Martha, come join the group. Come be part of the community. Let's have some time for teaching and worship now, and when we're all done, we can work together to prepare the meal and do the chores. I hope that's what Jesus is doing here, because triangulating harms relationships and harms communities. So if we have a problem with someone, the best way forward is to either make a line or make a circle. Either confront the issue head on with the person or create a circle that brings them in to the community. Amen.